For any of you that might be worried about basic training, maybe you're a little bit nervous, maybe you're scared, maybe you're afraid of failing, all sorts of stuff. I just want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about basic training, maybe to hopefully set your mind at ease or help you relax a little bit about it, or maybe just understand a little bit more about it. So we're going to have a little chat. Now, I understand basic training is not the same basic training I went through. For some of you veterans out there that are watching this, it's not the same basic training you went through. You'll hear different people's opinions saying it's gone softer, it's harder, it's easier, it's different, all sorts of things, right? There's all sorts of ways you can kind of look at it. Different, I think, would probably be the easiest explanation, right? It's different, right? Whether that's easier or harder really depends on the perspective of somebody, right? You may be someone that went to basic training in the 80s, and you talk to somebody who went to basic training in the 90s, and some people may say that one was harder, that one was easier, and that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be the case where somebody is going to say basic training was harder in my day, or maybe it's easier than it was now. There's a lot of opinions. I'd probably say the majority of people are going to say that basic training was harder when I did it compared to what future soldiers go through. And again, that's really up to the perspective of different people, because what you consider to be harder may be pretty easy for someone else. What may be easy for you may be harder for someone else. All sorts of, different ways to look at it, right? It's tough to say if it was basic training was harder or easier when you went through it, because it's different. Nonetheless, I'm not trying to say here, whether or not basic training is easier now, harder now, whatever. You might be watching this because you're getting ready to go to basic training. You want to go to basic training soon or whatever, and you're kind of just maybe a little bit anxious, maybe a little bit worried and a little bit nervous about it. And I want to give you my little spiel to maybe help you understand a little bit better. Maybe it helps you and helps you relax a little bit better about basic training. Straight up, basic training is going to suck, all right? In the end, you might have some moments and you look back and you're like, man, basic training was fun. But sometimes, like, in the moment, it sucks. And then after it's done and over with, you look back on and you're like, okay, that was actually pretty fun. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Or maybe it was really bad and you had a real rough time. And I think there's a lot of factors that definitely kind of contribute to which side of it you end up kind of going towards, right? If it ends up being a thing where, man, that was really tough, there could be a number of factors in there where it could be because maybe you went into it in bad shape and you had to really get whipped into shape. Maybe you thought that it was going to be easier. You didn't really know a whole lot about basic training and you thought it was going to be pretty easy, and then it turned out to be pretty tough. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're like, man, basic training was actually pretty easy. And that can also lead to a lot of factors. That could be a situation where you went into basic training in great shape, right? You were really well prepared. Maybe you had higher expectations. You thought the basic training was this because you heard some stories from veterans, you saw some videos, you saw some different documentaries, whatever, your own research, and you thought basic training was up here, and maybe it wasn't quite as high of expectation of what you thought it was. So in the end, it turns out, hey, basic training was actually pretty easy. But nonetheless, right, you got to understand that, basic training has a purpose. It's there to teach you the basics, right? That's what basic training is for. The basics of how to be a soldier, how to march, how to stand, how to address, a non-commissioned officer, an officer, whoever type of thing, and get those basics out of the way so that way you're successful in the Army. But there's other purposes that are in there too. It's also there to test your ability to be able to handle pressure, right? Because it's not the same as getting a regular corporate job, a regular job on the civilian side. There can be moments that can be very stressful in the Army, in the military, and they need to make sure you're not someone that's going to crack under the pressure. So they're putting you through some crap to make sure that you're not going to buckle, right? Yelling at you, treating you like crap, doing a lot of physical things. And that way in the end, they can see, hey, is this someone that's going to be able to handle the pressure? Because that's what they got to do. Is it going to be like that in the Army all the time? No, of course not. You're not going to have NCOs and individuals constantly yelling at you. You might have moments where that happens, especially if you mess up, of course. But it's not in the same kind of manner as like drill sergeants. So some people think of it as like, what's the point of this? What is the point of these people yelling at me like this? That's not how you talk to people. I don't like to be talked that way. The purpose of it is to make sure you can handle the pressure. If you can't handle someone getting in your face and yelling at you, then you're not going to handle, being able to be under the pressure and be able to do your job when someone's shooting at you, when someone's trying to kill you, right? Right now, there's not a lot of deployments going on. They put you in that situation, but that can easily change. That can easily change tomorrow. That can easily change in a year. That can easily change whenever, where if you buckled under pressure, you were like, I can't handle this person in my face yelling at me, how on earth would you be able to perform and do well when someone's on mountainside, someone's on the other side of this road or whatever, firing shots at you, trying to end you, trying to kill you, all right? And so you got to make sure that, you know, you can handle the pressure. I mean, definitely, you know, being yelled at is not quite the same stress that you would receive when someone's probably shooting at you, but definitely it's a good baseline to start with, right? If you can't, you know, handle being yelled at, how are you going to handle someone taking it even higher and shooting at you? But I mean, that's a lot of what basic training is. It's making sure that you can handle the stress, you can handle the pressure, right? And you just got to get through it, right? One of the big things I like to tell people, you know, they're asking for advice when they go off to basic training, is to understand that your experience in basic training is not what it's like in the Army. I've seen some people where they go to basic training and they're in that environment where you're getting yelled at, you're getting smoked, you're doing a lot of physical things, and it's tiring, it's exhausting, you're getting very little sleep, and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I get myself into? I made a mistake. This Army life sucks. Well, that's not the Army life. That's initial training. That's to make sure that you're ready for pressure that may come about in a combat zone or other kind of situations. But the key thing is that that's not what the Army is like. Don't think that your experience in basic training is what it's going to be like in the Army, because it's not, right? That it starts to relax some, right? Certain kind of aspects of that. You know, you're not going to have someone constantly yelling in your face. You're not going to have someone constantly making you do push-ups, making you do this or making you do that. It's, you know, trying to build that discipline so that way you respect those individuals that are above you, right? And you show them that respect. And hopefully by you showing them respect, they'll show you respect in return. But in the end, right, you can't think that, oh, this is what it's like to be in the Army, right? You go off to basic training and you go through the process and you're very unmotivated. You're worried now about what you've gotten yourself into, but that's not what the Army is like. That's what basic training is like. And then you get beyond that and you get to doing your job. So if you're watching this, you're nervous about basic training. It's okay. That's okay to be nervous about that kind of a thing. It's okay to have a little bit of fear about that. There was a quote I actually recently saw where it said, bravery is not letting everybody else know that you're afraid, but knowing that you are afraid. And I probably jacked that up. It's probably not exactly how the quote went, but it was kind of along those lines, right? It's okay to be afraid about something, but the real bravery is not letting everybody else know that you're afraid, right? So go through it, suck it up. It's going to suck. You get to a point where maybe it doesn't suck anymore. You get to a point where you look back on it and you're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but it gets different, right? And things aren't always the same as the way they are in basic training. So you can't judge basic training as to what it's going to be like to be in the Army. But it's okay to be nervous about basic training. You just got to remember what you're doing it for, right? Are you doing it for family? Are you doing it for you? Or are you doing it for whatever, right? You got to keep that in the back of your mind and push through everything and remember why you're doing this. Why are you joining the Army, right? And then hopefully in the end, that motivation will keep you driving forward, right? Push past all the bull crap, all the stuff you have to go through in basic training and get to your unit and then really start doing your job, hopefully, right? And really start being a soldier, right? So that's the goal. Don't get discouraged in basic training. Don't get worried that you made a mistake. I mean, the time to realize if you made a mistake is a couple of years into your Army career, not basic training. Basic training is too early to decide if you made a mistake or not. A couple of years into the Army, if you still feel that way, then sure, maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't right for you. It's not right for everyone. But just know that stay motivated in basic, right? Do what you got to do. Learn as much as you can. Put forth 110% effort, and it'll help you in the end, especially if you're going into it in not very great shape or maybe just decent shape, because you got to come in, you want to come out of it in better shape, right? So push through it all, and hopefully it all works out in the end. And hopefully you're one of those individuals that complete basic training and go, you know what? It was kind of fun. I kind of had a good time in basic training, right? There were some great moments. There were some great memories. I'm glad it's done and over with, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful to you. For my veterans that are watching this right now, if you have some tips for those individuals that are a little bit worried about basic training, drop the comments in the comments section down below. What is your tip to those individuals, right? Not trying to say that their basic training is easier than yours, none of that stuff, right? we're trying to motivate those people because it's different. Basic training is different than what you went through compared to what I went through, all that fun stuff. But nonetheless, what is your motivation that you would give to somebody to help them get through basic training? All right. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos. Learn today so that you can lead tomorrow. It's kind of this new catchphrase I'm going to try to work in here and there. I don't know if we'll work on the delivery of it, but thanks for hanging out. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.